This gripping story begins with Marcus Hayes, a hardworking IT specialist who lands his dream job at a prestigious Boston tech firm. However, his success incites jealousy in a colleague, Greg Ellison, whose prejudices lead to a calculated setup that accuses Marcus of theft. Fired and humiliated, Marcus refuses to let the injustice stand. With the help of a determined lawyer, Lena Porter, he embarks on a journey to uncover the truth. As Marcus digs deeper, he unveils a shocking conspiracy involving high-ranking executives who used him as a scapegoat to hide their embezzlement. This sets the stage for a high-stakes battle in which Marcus must risk everything, his career, reputation, and even his safety, to fight for justice. At its heart, this story is a powerful tale of resilience, courage, and standing up against systemic injustices. Themes of redemption, family, and fighting prejudice promise an emotional roller coaster, with Marcus determined to leave a legacy of truth and strength for his young son. Marcus Hayes walked into the sleek lobby of Cinetech Solutions, his chest swelling with pride as he took in the shimmering glass walls and bustling professionals. This was a world away from where he'd come from, and he'd earned every inch of his place here. A uniformed receptionist greeted him. "Mr. Hayes? Welcome to Cinetech. Here's your security badge. Your supervisor, Claire Walsh, is waiting to meet you upstairs." "Thank you," Marcus replied with a warm smile. Adjusting his tie, he stepped into the elevator. The office floor buzzed with energy, open workspaces filled with conversations and rapid keystrokes. Claire, a sharp-dressed woman in her 40s, approached him with an outstretched hand. "Marcus Hayes, our new IT specialist. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you." "Thrilled to be here," Marcus said, shaking her hand. She guided him through the workspace, introducing him to colleagues. One man stood out, Greg Ellison. Pale blue eyes scrutinized Marcus as they shook hands. "Greg handles infrastructure. You'll be working closely with him," Claire explained. Greg's smile was thin and fleeting, and Marcus couldn't shake a sense of cool indifference. "I'll do my best to keep up," Marcus said good-naturedly. "We'll see," Greg murmured, barely audible, before stepping away. Later that day, Marcus joined his first team meeting. Around a sleek, glass conference table, the team brainstormed improvements to cybersecurity protocols. Marcus presented an idea about automated alerts for phishing attempts, simple but effective. Claire leaned forward. "That's brilliant, Marcus. Let's explore it further in the next sprint." The room murmured approval, except for Greg, who shifted in his chair. "Interesting," he said, his tone clipped. "Though implementation might be tricky." "Not at all," Marcus countered, pulling up a rough diagram on his tablet. "Here's how I envision the system integrating with our current infrastructure." Claire nodded with enthusiasm. "Great initiative. Keep that energy, Marcus." Greg's lips tightened into a thin line, his pale eyes lingering on Marcus longer than comfortable. Over the next few days, Marcus settled in, proving himself an invaluable asset. But friction with Greg grew. One afternoon, during an informal coffee break, Greg casually mentioned a piece of high-value equipment stored in a secure room. "Strange that it hasn't been properly inventoried," Greg said, addressing the group but glancing at Marcus. "If it were misplaced, heads would roll." "That sounds like a security risk," Marcus said. "Maybe I'll check on it later, see what's going on." "Good man," Greg replied, an odd glint in his eye. "Wouldn't want something that valuable disappearing." 2 days later, chaos erupted. The expensive equipment was missing, and an emergency meeting was called. In the conference room, the air was tense as Claire played security footage. The grainy video showed Marcus entering the secure room at an ambiguous hour. His heart sank. That can't be right," he stammered. Greg leaned back in his chair, feigning concern. "Marcus, why were you there after hours?" "I wasn't. Or, if I was, it must have been during my audit," Marcus replied, struggling to remember. HR representatives exchanged glances, their expressions skeptical. "Marcus, we'll need to speak privately," Claire said, her voice heavy with disappointment. In a dimly lit conference room, Marcus faced Claire, two HR officers, and the grim reality of his situation. "The evidence is damning," one officer stated. "You'll need to clear out your belongings immediately." "I swear I didn't take it," Marcus pleaded. "Why would I?" "It's out of our hands now," Claire said, her tone stiff. "We'll cooperate with the authorities if needed." As Marcus left the office with his box of belongings, whispers trailed him. His colleagues' eyes alternated between pity and suspicion. Near the elevator, Greg stood with an expression Marcus couldn't decipher. "Tough break," Greg said. "Hope it all gets sorted out." Marcus stared back, anger brewing beneath his humiliation. "I'll prove I didn't do this." Greg smirked. "Good luck with that." Marcus walked out into the cold Boston evening, determined that this injustice would not define him. This was just the beginning. Marcus shut the front door of his modest apartment, his hands trembling as he set his box of belongings on the dining table. His wife, Janine, emerged from the kitchen, her brow creasing with worry. "Marcus? You're home early," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. He sat down heavily on a chair, his head dropping into his hands. They fired me, Janine. They think I stole something." Janine's eyes widened. "What? That doesn't make sense. You would never do that." She knelt beside him, her hand resting on his arm. "There's footage," he said hoarsely. "It looks bad, but I swear, I didn't do it." "Of course, you didn't," Janine said firmly. "We'll fight this. We'll find a way." A small voice interrupted. "Dad? What's wrong?" 8-year-old Elijah stood in the doorway, clutching his superhero backpack. Marcus forced a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing for you to worry about, buddy. Just grown-up stuff." Janine turned to Elijah. "Why don't you finish your homework? I'll call you when dinner's ready." As Elijah scampered off, Janine returned her gaze to Marcus. "We'll get through this together. You're innocent, and the truth will come out." Her unwavering support made his chest tighten, equal parts comfort and guilt. He resolved to find the answers, for her, for Elijah, and for himself. Later that night, sleep eluded Marcus. Sitting at his desk, he opened his laptop and reviewed the security footage email he'd forwarded to his personal account before his access was revoked. His sharp eye for detail caught something odd. The timestamp on the footage didn't align with his schedule. He paused, then played the footage frame by frame. "Wait a second," he murmured to himself. There was a subtle skip, frames missing, perhaps. His mind raced. Janine's voice broke through his thoughts. "Still awake?" Marcus turned to see her leaning against the doorframe. "I think the footage was tampered with," he said, his voice tinged with hope. "If I can prove it, I might be able to clear my name." Janine stepped closer. "Can you prove that? Can someone help you?" Marcus exhaled heavily. "I don't know yet. But it's a start." The next day, Marcus reached out to Clara Tran, a former colleague known for her tech savviness and integrity. They met at a quiet coffee shop downtown. "Clara, I need your help," Marcus began. He explained the situation, laying out his observations about the footage. Her dark eyes narrowed. "Greg Ellison? He's behind this, isn't he?" Marcus blinked. "What makes you say that?" Clara sipped her coffee, her expression unreadable. "He's done similar things before. There's a reason most people avoid working too closely with him. I've heard whispers about underhanded tactics. He preys on coworkers he feels threatened by." "Why didn't anyone report him?" Marcus asked. "No proof, just rumors. He's careful." "But you're saying this evidence against you doesn't add up?" Marcus nodded. "I need to prove he's behind this, and you're the only person I trust." Clara considered for a moment before nodding. "I'll see what I can dig up. No promises, but I'll try." Armed with the suspicion that Greg orchestrated the setup, Marcus waited outside Cinetech one evening as employees streamed out. When Greg appeared, Marcus called out, "Greg, we need to talk." Greg turned, his smug expression faltering for a split second before the mask slid back into place. "Marcus, shouldn't you be elsewhere?" Marcus took a step closer, his jaw tight. "I know you're behind this. The footage, the theft, all of it." Greg's smirk deepened. Strong words for someone without evidence. "Careful, Hayes. Accusations can be dangerous." Marcus's fists clenched, but he held his ground. "You made a mistake. I'll find it. And when I do, everyone will see you for what you really are." "Good luck with that," Greg said, brushing past him with infuriating nonchalance. Back at home, Janine urged Marcus to seek professional help. "You need someone who knows how to fight this. A lawyer, maybe?" After some research, Marcus found Lena Porter, a civil rights attorney known for her fierce determination. Nervously, he sat across from her in her small office the next day, recounting his ordeal. Lena listened intently, her piercing gray eyes locked on him. When he finished, she leaned back, fingers steepled. "Your case has potential, but it'll be tough. Greg seems like the type to cover his tracks well. Still, tampering with security footage? That's a starting point. Do you think I have a chance?" Marcus asked. Lena's expression hardened. "I think we make our own chances. If you're willing to fight, I'll be right there with you." For the first time in days, hope sparked in Marcus's chest. He had an ally, and the seeds of doubt were transforming into determination. Marcus's breath fogged in the early morning chill as he waited outside Lena Porter's office. When she finally arrived, her sharp gray eyes met his, brimming with purpose. "Let's get to work," she said, unlocking the door to her office. Inside, Lena studied the security footage Marcus provided, her focus unwavering. After several minutes, she leaned back in her chair, lips pressed into a thin line. "The timestamp inconsistency you noticed? It's more than that. Parts of this footage have been spliced. Subtle but sloppy." Marcus leaned forward. "So, it's fake?" Lena nodded. "Fabricated evidence. But proving it will require corroboration and expertise. We'll need an independent analyst to verify this." Marcus felt a surge of hope. "I know a guy, a freelance forensics expert. He's thorough and discreet." Lena smiled. "Perfect. Also, I'll dig into company policies and see if HR broke protocol during your dismissal. They've handed us a thread to pull on." While Lena worked her legal angles, Clara dug into the internal systems at Cinetech. In the quiet of her own apartment, she navigated encrypted servers, her fingers flying over the keyboard. She unearthed deleted emails between Greg and a senior manager, their tone veiled but unmistakably collusive. "Greg, this should take care of our problem." "Manager, good. No loose ends." Clara's pulse quickened as she stumbled upon deleted system logs, a clear attempt to erase evidence. She immediately copied the files to a secure drive and called Marcus. "I found something," she said over the phone. "It's not a smoking gun, but it's enough to paint Greg as the mastermind." "Send it to Lena," Marcus said. "This is the break we needed." That evening, Marcus walked into his son's school gymnasium, late for Elijah's science fair. The event was winding down, parents streaming out while Elijah sat glumly beside his project. "Dad," Elijah said quietly, "you missed it." Marcus's chest tightened. "Buddy, I'm so sorry. I got caught up in something really important." Elijah's wide eyes met his father's. "More important than me?" Janine appeared, her expression weary. "Let's talk later, Marcus." At home, Janine's voice was calm but firm. "You're fighting this with everything you have, and I get that. But don't let it cost you us. Elijah needs his father just as much as you need to clear your name." Marcus nodded, guilt flooding him. "I'll make it right. I promise." Lena's next move was to investigate Cineteca's finances. Days spent poring over public records and accessing private ones through legal means finally bore fruit. She flagged several irregular transactions originating from Greg's department. "He's siphoning funds," Lena told Marcus during a late-night meeting. "Small amounts, cleverly disguised, but it adds up over time. And here's the kicker, it coincides with when you started working there. I think he needed a scapegoat in case someone caught on." Marcus's fists clenched. "So, framing me wasn't personal, it was strategic." "Likely both," Lena said. "This isn't just about your innocence, Marcus. There's a larger web of corruption here, and exposing it could topple some powerful players." The next day, Marcus picked Elijah up from school. As they walked to the car, Greg appeared from nowhere, leaning casually against the lamppost. "Nice day for a stroll with your kid," Greg said, his voice dripping with mockery. Marcus stepped between Greg and Elijah, his jaw tightening. "Stay away from my family." Greg smirked. "Just a friendly tip. You're poking a hornet's nest. Let it go, Hayes. No one would blame you for protecting your kid." Marcus's voice dropped. "I'm not scared of you, Greg. If anything happens to my family, you'll regret it." Greg's smirk faltered for the briefest moment before he strode away. Elijah looked up at his father. "Who was that?" "Nobody you need to worry about," Marcus said, though his heart thundered in his chest. As Greg disappeared into the distance, Marcus's resolve hardened. The fight wasn't just for him anymore, it was for his family, his name, and his future. Under cover of night, Clara Tran sat in Cineteca's dimly lit office, her nerves on edge as she accessed a restricted server. The glow from her monitor reflected in her glasses as she worked swiftly, bypassing layers of security protocols. Her heart raced as she stumbled upon a folder labeled Damage Control buried deep within the system. Inside, encrypted communications revealed a damning pattern. Conversations between Greg Ellison and senior executives detailed plans to fabricate evidence, deflect blame, and protect higher-ups involved in financial discrepancies. Clara's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She knew downloading this data was risky, but the stakes were too high to hesitate. Copying the files to an external drive, she logged out and erased traces of her access. As she exited the building, her pulse thundered in her ears. She had crossed the line, but the information she carried could change everything. The next morning, Clara handed the drive to Lena and Marcus in a quiet cafe. "This is it," she said, her voice shaky. "Communications that tie Greg and senior executives to systemic corruption." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've done more than enough, Clara." "Thank you." The weight of the fight began to take its toll at home. One evening, Marcus missed yet another family dinner, arriving home to find Janine quietly cleaning the kitchen. "You promised you'd make it," she said, not looking up. "I know," Marcus replied, guilt in his voice. Clara found something huge. This could turn the case around. Janine paused, setting down a dish. "And what about turning things around here? Elijah's been asking why you're always gone." "I'm trying to hold it together, Marcus, but it feels like this fight is consuming you." Marcus sighed, stepping closer to her. "I'm doing this for us, for him. So he grows up in a world where he knows his father stood up for what's right." Janine looked at him, her expression softening but still weary. "Just don't forget who you're fighting for." Back at Lena's office, the team pored over the encrypted communications Clara had uncovered. Lena's eyes lit up as she read through the files. "This is more than we could have hoped for," she said. "Not just Greg, but executives directing him to frame employees and cover up financial irregularities." Marcus leaned over her shoulder, pointing to a series of emails. "This one. It's from Richard Belmont." Lena's brows furrowed. "The CEO. If we tie him to this, it'll be the end of him and Cinetec as it stands." Clara looked uneasy. "They're not going to go down without a fight. Be ready for retaliation." The backlash came swiftly. That afternoon, Clara called Marcus in tears. They've put me on unpaid leave, she said. Planted something on my workstation. I don't know how they found out. Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. We'll clear your name. They're trying to silence you because you're a threat. Clara's voice trembled. Be careful, Marcus. If they're coming after me, they'll come after you. After the call, Marcus relayed the news to Lena. She set her jaw. This proves they're running scared. We're hitting too close to the truth. Let's use this to our advantage. Determined to strengthen their case, Marcus and Lena reached out to former Cinetech employees, many of whom had quietly left due to the toxic workplace. They held a meeting at a local community center, its walls adorned with vibrant murals of solidarity and hope. We've all been affected by the same system, Marcus said to the small but attentive group. This isn't just my fight. It's ours. Together, we can expose the truth. One by one, people shared their stories of mistreatment, discrimination, and unethical practices within the company. Lena documented every detail, weaving their testimonies into a growing narrative of systemic abuse. As the meeting ended, a young woman approached Marcus. What you're doing takes courage. I want to help. Let me know how I can support. Marcus felt a flicker of hope as he shook her hand. Their numbers were growing, and with it, their strength. This was no longer just his battle, it was a movement. The buzz of muted conversations filled the downtown coffee shop as Marcus sat across from Lena, tension coiling in his chest. Across from them sat Jordan Whitmore, a seasoned investigative journalist known for tackling corporate scandals. Lena laid a thick folder on the table, the documentation of Cinetech's wrongdoings meticulously organized. What you have here is compelling, Jordan said, flipping through the files. But corroboration is crucial. I need testimonies from others who've experienced this firsthand. Publicly exposing this could blow the lid off Cinetech, but it'll take more than just this folder. Marcus's throat tightened. I'll do whatever it takes. If coming forward means stopping them, I'm ready. Jordan offered a small smile. Bravery like yours is how change happens. Let's make it count. 2 days later, Lena arranged a community event at the local center. Marcus stood on stage, his heart hammering as he scanned the small but engaged crowd. Former employees, activists, and neighbors filled the room, murmuring encouragement. He took a deep breath. For years, Cinetech has exploited and silenced those of us who stood up against corruption. I was framed and fired, but I'm not here to dwell on what I've lost. I'm here to fight for justice, for myself, for every employee wronged by their practices, and for those too afraid to speak up. The applause started slow but quickly built into a crescendo. People approached the microphone one by one, sharing their experiences. As their voices intertwined, Marcus felt his resolve solidify. This wasn't just his fight anymore, it was a collective mission. Later that evening, Lena's phone buzzed. She frowned at the screen. It's from one of our contacts, she told Marcus, answering the call on speaker. The voice on the line, shaky and hurried, spoke of new evidence from a former Cinetech insider willing to cooperate. Arrangements were made for a late-night meeting in a public park. But when Marcus and Lena arrived, the atmosphere was heavy with unease. The insider, a man in his early 30s with shifting eyes, handed them a USB drive. This has everything, he whispered. But as Lena examined its contents, her eyes narrowed. This is falsified, she said, her tone cutting. You're trying to sabotage us. The man stammered, but before he could respond, he darted into the night. Marcus stood frozen, rage simmering beneath his skin. A plant, Lena murmured. Greg's trying to discredit us. We need to double-check everything from now on. The next day, Marcus's car windshield was shattered, and a crudely written note was left under the wiper, drop it, or else. That evening, Janine found their tires slashed in the driveway, her face pale as she handed Marcus a similar note found in their mailbox. We can't let this scare us, Marcus said, though fear rippled beneath his bravado. He knelt to meet Elijah's gaze. You're safe, buddy. I promise. Janine pulled Marcus aside. This has to stop. What if it gets worse? What if? Her voice cracked. Marcus held her close. I know you're scared. I am too. But this isn't just about us anymore. If we back down now, Greg wins. I won't let that happen. Hope emerged when Clara, undeterred despite being on leave, sent over hidden surveillance footage she had uncovered. The video showed Greg inside the server room at Cinetech the night of the alleged theft. It clearly contradicted his alibi and linked him directly to tampering with evidence against Marcus. Marcus and Lena watched the footage with renewed determination. Lena smirked. This puts us back in the game. Greg can't talk his way out of this one. Now we're playing offense, Marcus said, his voice steady with conviction. He stared at the screen as the fight reignited within him. It's time to take this public. The next move would shift the power dynamics entirely, propelling the fight into a high-stakes battle for truth and justice. The next morning, Lena burst into her office carrying a stack of legal documents. Marcus was already there, sipping his third cup of coffee, his exhaustion masked by steely determination. This is it, Lena announced. The wrongful termination and defamation lawsuit is ready. It also includes claims of systemic discrimination within Cinetech. Marcus set his cup down. Once this goes public, they're going to come after us harder than ever. Lena nodded. That's why we'll counter every move they make. You faced their worst, Marcus, and you're still here. Let's make sure they know you're not backing down. Within hours, the lawsuit was filed, and the news broke across major outlets. Headlines proclaimed a bold legal battle against Cinetech, thrusting Marcus into the public eye. Cinetech wasted no time retaliating. Their legal team, led by an aggressive corporate lawyer named Victor Grant, launched a smear campaign, painting Marcus as a disgruntled ex-employee seeking revenge. On a late-night talk show, Grant dismissed the allegations with a smug grin. Mr. Hayes was terminated due to undeniable evidence of theft. His claims are nothing more than baseless accusations. Watching the broadcast from home, Marcus's jaw clenched. Janine placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Don't let them get to you. The truth will come out. Lena called immediately after the broadcast. This is exactly what we expected. Their lies won't hold up in court. It's not just about court, Marcus replied. It's about everyone watching and believing them. Then we fight harder, Lena said. We'll hold a press conference tomorrow and present our side. They won't control this narrative. The tension was palpable in the deposition room. Greg Ellison sat across from Lena and Marcus, flanked by Cinetech's legal team. Despite the evidence mounting against him, Greg exuded smug confidence. Lena began her questioning, her voice measured but firm. Mr. Ellison, can you explain your actions on the night the security footage was tampered with? Greg leaned back in his chair. I have no idea what you're talking about. I wasn't there. Lena slid the newly uncovered surveillance footage across the table. This says otherwise. Care to adjust your statement? Greg's composure cracked momentarily, his smirk faltering as he stammered, that could be anyone. Really? Lena's voice sharpened. Because this footage clearly shows you entering the server room at 11:45 p.m., the same time the logs indicate unauthorized access. Marcus watched as Greg's confidence dissolved under Lena's relentless questioning. Though the deposition didn't deliver a full confession, it dealt a significant blow to Greg's credibility. That night, Lena received an encrypted email from an anonymous source. Attached were internal financial documents exposing a web of embezzlement tied directly to Cinetech's senior executives, including CEO Richard Belmont. She called Marcus immediately. This changes everything. It's not just Greg. The entire executive team is implicated. We need to expand the lawsuit to include corporate fraud and conspiracy. Marcus's stomach churned. Do we have the resources to take this on? If we don't, no one else will, Lena replied. We're in too deep to back down now. The next day, Marcus and Lena organized a rally outside the courthouse. Supporters gathered, carrying signs that read "Justice for Workers" and "Hold Cinetec accountable." Former employees shared their stories with local reporters, amplifying the growing outrage against the company. Marcus took the microphone, his voice steady despite the cameras pointed at him. "This isn't just my fight. It's our fight against corruption, exploitation, and discrimination. Together, we'll ensure that no one else suffers the way we did." The crowd erupted into cheers, and Marcus felt a surge of hope. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, it felt winnable. Cinetec's settlement offer arrived by courier the next morning. Marcus stared at the document, the words blurring as he read. The sum was substantial, enough to ensure financial security for his family, but the attached non-disclosure agreement felt like a muzzle. Lena's voice on the phone was sharp. "It's a trap, Marcus. They want to silence you and end this before the truth comes out." Janine sat beside him, her brow furrowed. This could protect Elijah's future. But, would you be able to live with it? Marcus's jaw tightened. "I can't. If I sign this, they win. I've come too far to back down now." With a steady hand, he slid the offer into the shredder. Greg Ellison wasn't done playing dirty. Days later, an anonymous tip leaked that Marcus had allegedly accepted bribes while working at Cinetec. It was a fabrication, but the media latched onto it. Marcus faced a frenzy of reporters outside his home, microphones thrust in his face. "Did you accept bribes?" one shouted. "Are you running a smear campaign against Cinetec?" No comment, Marcus said through clenched teeth, shielding Elijah with his arm as they hurried to the car. Later that night, Lena called. "We traced the leak. It came from Greg. This is his Hail Mary. The bribery accusation is bogus, but we need to counter this narrative fast." Marcus's anger boiled over. "Then let's expose him for good." The courtroom was packed for the trial. Marcus took the stand, his palms damp but his resolve firm. Lena guided him through his testimony, her questions deliberate and concise. "Mr. Hayes, why are you pursuing this case?" she asked. He looked directly at the jury. "Because it's not just about me. It's about everyone who has been silenced or scapegoated by people like Greg Ellison and companies like Cinetec. This fight is about justice and accountability." Greg, seated at the defendant's table, avoided eye contact, his smirk long gone. Then came Lena's final move, the surveillance footage, emails, and financial records tying Greg and the executives to the embezzlement scheme. The jury murmured, and the judge's gavel demanded silence. As the trial neared its conclusion, an unexpected whistleblower emerged, a Cinetec financial analyst with internal memos that tied CEO Richard Belmont directly to the conspiracy. The documents detailed Belmont's orders to fabricate evidence and misappropriate company funds. Belmont's attorney tried to dismiss the whistleblower as unreliable, but the evidence was irrefutable. The CEO resigned the next day, and Cinetec's stock plummeted amid public outcry. When the verdict came, it was unanimous. The jury found in favor of Marcus Hayes, awarding him damages and mandating Cinetec to implement transparency reforms and diversity training. Marcus chose not to return to the company, despite their offer to reinstate him. Instead, he stood on the courthouse steps, addressing the media. "This victory is not just mine," he said. "It belongs to everyone who has ever been wronged by corporate greed and corruption. Together, we can create a future where justice isn't just a dream but a reality." Beside him, Lena smiled, and Janine and Elijah beamed with pride. The battle had been hard-fought, but the reward was worth it. The truth was out, and Marcus's voice had sparked a movement. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. The weight of the recent trial had lifted, but a new question loomed: what came next? On the table were two offers, a reinstatement at Cinetec under its new leadership and a position at a nonprofit advocating for workers' rights and corporate reform. Janine joined him, setting her own mug down. "You've worked hard to build your career. Are you sure you want to walk away from it?" Marcus took a deep breath. It's not just about my career anymore. I've seen what happens when no one speaks up. The nonprofit, it feels like where I'm supposed to be. Janine's warm smile eased his uncertainty. Then do it. I'm proud of you, whatever you choose. At the community center, Marcus and Lena hosted a meeting with the former employees who had joined the fight against Cinetech. The atmosphere was electric with hope and determination. Lena stood at the front of the room, gesturing toward a whiteboard filled with plans. We're forming an advocacy group focused on workplace reform, transparency, and justice. Everyone in this room has a voice, and together, we can make a difference. Marcus stepped forward, scanning the faces of those who had trusted him to lead. We've proven what's possible when we stand together. This isn't the end, it's the beginning of something bigger. Let's keep fighting, not just for ourselves, but for everyone out there who needs us. Applause erupted, the room united by shared purpose. After weeks of relentless focus on the case, Marcus finally had the time to reconnect with Janine and Elijah. One crisp Sunday morning, they visited a nearby park, laughter carrying on the breeze as Elijah raced ahead. I missed this, Janine said, walking alongside Marcus. Me too, he admitted, slipping his hand into hers. Thank you for being my rock through all of it. I couldn't have done it without you. Janine smiled. We're stronger for it. And Elijah, he's so proud of you, Marcus. We both are. Watching Elijah's joyful play, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. He had fought for his family, and now he could be fully present for them. Weeks later, Marcus took the stage at a national conference on corporate reform. The room was packed with advocates, business leaders, and workers eager for change. My name is Marcus Hayes, he began, his voice steady. I was wrongfully accused and nearly destroyed by a system designed to protect the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. But I fought back. Not alone, but with the support of people who believed in justice. Today, I stand before you as proof that change is possible. But this is only the beginning. It's on all of us to demand accountability and create workplaces where integrity is valued over profits. The standing ovation that followed marked not an ending but the start of a nationwide movement inspired by his courage. On a quiet evening, Marcus, Janine, and Elijah strolled through the park, the golden light of the setting sun casting long shadows. Elijah clutched his father's hand tightly, his other swinging his favorite superhero action figure. Dad, does this mean you're a superhero? Elijah asked, his voice brimming with admiration. Marcus chuckled. Not quite, buddy. But maybe I'm trying to make the world a little better, like the heroes you look up to. As Janine leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder, he felt an overwhelming sense of contentment. The battle had been grueling, but it had led to this moment, a new beginning, with his family at his side and a purpose that would drive him forward. The future stretched before them, bright and full of promise.